More of a team player, I repeated, steady on the outside while my nails carved half-moons into my palm beneath the table. Helen McBride, mid-50s, blazer one size too small, smile one shade too artificial, sat in her glass corner office overlooking downtown Chicago. She leaned back like she was delivering wisdom instead of an insult. "Camille, you're brilliant," she drawled, "but Rachel, she's charming. People enjoy her energy. She's just easier. Not better, just easier." I was 41, 6 years into Weslake Strategies. I'd left a teaching career at 35 and thrown myself into corporate life like it was a second chance. Midnight reports, client rescues at dawn, presentations that salvaged accounts everyone else had written off. I doubled the Midwest portfolio, designed a training system still used nationwide, saved the company nearly $2 million in operational waste. But Rachel, with her brunch selfies and recycled girlboss captions, was getting the promotion. Helen pretended to shuffle papers, waiting for me to smile, nod, thank her, be small. Instead, I placed a crisp white envelope on her desk. "I appreciate the feedback," I said, voice steady. "Here's my resignation, 2 weeks' notice." Her polished composure cracked. "Camille, let's not rush." "No need," I answered. "You made your priorities clear, and I'm focused on outcomes." What she didn't know, what no one had bothered to notice, was that while Rachel was busy performing, I'd been quietly building my own leadership development firm, fully registered, profitable since Q2, scaling. I didn't lose today, I simply outgrew the room. As I stepped out of her office, the river north floor shifted, whispers, glances, Rachel already imagining where to hang her motivational poster over my old desk. I walked to my cubicle like it was any other Monday. Because inside that resignation envelope was a second document, one guaranteed to make Helen choke on her artisan latte. The next 2 weeks, pure theater. Rachel paraded through the bullpen like she'd won an Oscar for Best Supporting Employee. On day 4, she leaned over my cubicle wall with a sympathetic smirk. "Cam, I hope you're not too upset. I know you really wanted that role." I met her eyes briefly while backing up 3 years of metrics, training modules, and process innovations, not to steal, but to document every dollar saved, every system created, every result attributed to my team. "No hard feelings, Rachel," I said coolly, "you'll shine." She walked away satisfied, unaware that the foundation she glowed on had been built on my work. 3 years ago, burned out and unheard, I'd started developing an adaptive team performance software. On my time, my tools, my idea. Last week, the patent came through. That second document in my envelope detailed the millions in projected retention and revenue tied directly to my IP. A week later, I got a message from Jared Lewis, CEO of Architect Solutions, our largest competitor. Coffee turned into a contract. "I don't want just your talent," Jared said, sliding a folder across the table. "I want you as a partner, someone who knows outcomes matter more than office politics." For the first time in years, I felt seen. On my final day, as I turned in my badge, Helen summoned me. Her voice, usually dipped in saccharine confidence, trembled. "Camille, we need to discuss the report you attached to your resignation." She held the pages like they burned. "Why didn't you tell us about this platform?" I sat, adjusted my blazer. "I did, 3 times. You said you were prioritizing interpersonal chemistry." Color drained from her face as she read the operational savings, predictive workflows, retention metrics. "It's patented?" she whispered. "Yes, and I've accepted an equity partnership at Architect. They'll scale it firm-wide." Her chair scraped. "Camille, no, you can't. That's our main competitor. What about loyalty?" I tilted my head. "You rewarded charisma over competence, Instagram optics over outcomes. Loyalty is earned, not assumed." "We'll match their offer," she blurted. "Senior VP, stay." "It was never about the title," I said, standing. "It was about being valued." I left her scrambling, calling recruiters, upper management, anyone who could undo a choice she'd made months ago. But some doors don't reopen. If you've ever been underestimated, and you're ready to see Camille flip an industry, subscribe. Because what happens next proves walking away isn't quitting, it's leveling up. That evening, as I packed my final box, I found a note stuck to my monitor. "Sad to see you go. Stay in touch, Rachel." I smirked, crushed it in my fist, tossed it into the trash. She'd hear my name again, all of them would. My first day at Architect Solutions felt like stepping into another universe, floor-to-ceiling windows over Lake Michigan, sleek lines, no passive-aggressive Slack threads. On my door, Camille Bennett, partner, Strategy Systems Innovation. But the real difference wasn't the office. It was the respect. Jared Lewis, the CEO himself, called a full all-hands meeting the morning I officially joined. But this wasn't some polite onboarding speech or a generic welcome to the team slideshow. He told my story. He spoke about the platform I built, the measurable impact it had delivered, and how it had already begun reshaping operations across the industry. Camille isn't here to fill a role, Jared said to the packed room. She's here to lead a frontier. Her work has saved millions. It's brilliant, it's proven, and it's only the beginning. At Westlake, I was a ghost behind the curtain. At Architect, I was the architect in the spotlight. 3 months later came the moment that sealed everything. I was mid-strategy workshop when my phone buzzed. A message from Tarek Henderson, one of the few sharp minds still left at Westlake. Check the news. Something big just dropped. I stepped into my office and pulled up the headline. Weslake Strategies loses 30% of clients after Q2 systems breakdown. Brutal didn't begin to describe it. Missed deadlines, ballooning budgets, 3 flagship clients gone in a single quarter. The investigation cited fractured processes, outdated workflow structures, and dependence on undocumented internal logic. One quote hit harder than the rest, from one of my former clients. Service has collapsed, said Thomas Kwan, CEO of Terranova Solutions. We once trusted Westlake with enterprise-level integrations, now they can't even deliver basic timelines. It's like the backbone of their operations disappeared. I smiled. It had. I was that backbone, the one they undervalued, sidelined, and handed off to someone who didn't even know which end of a workflow you're supposed to hold. Another buzz. Tarek, Rachel's having a full-blown meltdown in the break room. I leaned back, sunlight from Lake Michigan cutting across my desk. I didn't need revenge. I had results. For anyone who's ever been passed over for someone louder, flashier, or more likable, listen closely, because Camille's rise is just beginning, and what comes next, it shifts the entire landscape. Rachel had spent years mimicking competence, buzzwords, smiles, curated optics, but optics don't save systems, and Helen, who gambled everything on charisma over capability, was watching her decisions unravel on a public stage. Meanwhile, at Architect, my system wasn't just running, it was rewriting the rules. Project timelines down 52%. Client satisfaction at record highs. Operational KPIs spiking across every division. Jared approved a full-scale rollout, and 3 Fortune 100 companies were already in negotiations to license my platform. They underestimated me. Now they were racing to catch what they'd thrown away. 6 months after I walked out of Westlake, I arrived at my Architect office to find Jared standing beside my desk, a folded copy of the Chicago Business Ledger in hand. Have you seen this? He asked. Front page headline. Weslake Strategies announces emergency restructure amid mass departures and system collapse. I scanned the article. Looks like they're tearing down everything, I said. They're finally admitting how badly they mishandled things, Jared replied. They tried rebuilding your platform internally, but they didn't understand the architecture behind it. Of course not, I said. They thought it was code, but the logic was the real engine. Jared nodded, a slow smile forming, the smile of someone who recognized long games and people who know how to win them. That's why the board voted unanimously to promote you, he said. Starting next week, you'll step in as our Executive Vice President of Strategic Innovation. You didn't just improve our systems, you changed our direction. A warm tide rose in my chest. This was what recognition was supposed to feel like. Not applause for compliance. Not a pat on the head for being easy, but respect for building something real. Later that evening, as the Chicago skyline glowed like molten gold, an email slid into my inbox. From Helen McBride, subject, apology. I figured you'd heard what's happening at Westlake. I was wrong. Dismissing your work was the worst mistake of my career. The board knows now. They know what you built, and what we lost. I resigned last week. Rachel stepped down a month ago. Turns out deliverables don't respond to charm. I stared at the screen, emotion flickering across my face like a shadow passing over glass. Validation had finally arrived. Not that I needed it, but poetry has its timing. The email continued. I know it's too late to reverse anything, But I wanted you to know you were right. Results do matter. I wish I'd seen it sooner. Best. Helen. I read it twice. Once, it would have cracked something open inside me. Once, it might have softened old wounds. But that version of me didn't live here anymore. Now, sunlight spilled across my Architect Solutions corner office, glinting off the framed patent certificate, the polished award from our record-breaking quarter, the fresh issue of Forbes naming me one of the top 10 women redefining tech innovation. Helen's message wasn't a reckoning. It was a footnote. I typed a single line. Thank you for your message. You're right, results do matter. Wishing you well in what comes next. Send. I leaned back, taking in the space around me. Every inch, every ounce, had been earned, built, crafted from discipline, not politics. The next morning, I called an all-team meeting. Engineers, analysts, designers, all people who showed up because they believed in the mission, not because they needed to be seen. Once the room settled, I spoke. Before we jump into the next rollout, I said, I want to tell you a quick story, not about code, about value, about recognizing it in others, and about refusing to let anyone else define your worth. Heads nodded, shoulders shifted forward. People felt the weight behind the words. This wasn't a company running on ego or optics. It ran on integrity, on courage, on quiet, disciplined fire. That evening, driving past Westlake's headquarters, I slowed at a red light. Their once proud logo looked faded now, like a memory sun-bleached by consequence. A blinking for-lease sign hung in one of the windows, another downsizing. But I didn't feel triumphant. I felt grateful. Grateful they didn't see me. Grateful they underestimated me. Grateful they pushed me out, because that push became the freedom to build something better. Sometimes rejection isn't a loss. Sometimes it's the ignition. My phone buzzed. A text from Tarek lit up the screen. Westlake's board is asking about you. They want to know if you'd consider coming back as CEO. I stared at the message, then typed. Appreciate it, Tarek, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Because true success doesn't come from circling back to prove anyone wrong. It comes from proving yourself right. It comes from holding your value steady, even when no one else can see it. From refusing to shrink for someone else's comfort. From rising because it's who you are, not because someone finally noticed. And that's where the Real story begins. As I pulled into the garage of my Lincoln Park townhouse, I thought about the other Camilles out there, the quiet, brilliant ones, the people who get things done without turning every task into a performance. Maybe my story will reach one of them. Maybe it'll be the nudge they need to stop waiting for approval and start building without permission. Because rejection isn't a dead end. It's a redirection. You take the silence, the dismissal, the underestimation, and you turn it into systems, platforms, legacies. You build something so undeniable that the same people who overlooked you end up chasing the shadow of your impact. Later, in my home office, reviewing global licensing proposals for the very platform Westlake once ignored, I glanced at the framed quote above my desk. The one Helen once used as an insult. You're too focused on results. Funny thing is, she was right. That focus is exactly what brought me here. To leadership. To innovation. To clarity. To the life I was meant to build. If you've made it this far, thank you. This wasn't just my story. It's for anyone who has ever been told they are too serious, too driven, too much, or not enough in all the wrong ways. If you saw yourself in my journey, talk to me. Drop a comment. Tell me where you are in your story. Because I know the loneliness of delivering excellence while being treated like background noise. But hear me clearly. You're not invisible. You're not imagining it. You're not demanding too much, you're demanding what's fair. If this moved you, subscribe. Not just to follow what happens next, but to join a community built on quiet strength, earned success, and unstoppable resolve. And if I could leave you with one truth, let it be this. Stop waiting for permission. Stop shrinking to fit their comfort. Don't let someone else's small vision shrink your destiny. Use their doubt as fuel. Use their silence as space to build. Keep going. Because one day, they'll realize what they lost, and by then, you'll already be standing somewhere better. Somewhere you built with your own two hands. This is your sign. This is your moment. You don't have to prove them wrong. You just have to prove yourself right.